want you to imagine a district rolling out ChatGPT access to all their classrooms this fall. Imagine an announcement that comes with a 1-page or even a 50-page guide, a few hours of training, and fundamentally, a hope and a belief that teachers are going to figure out how to use it responsibly. Teachers see test scores improve during the first interim assessment when students have generative AI access. Administrators count that as a win. By winter, students show weaker performance on unassisted assessments. What could be happening? Hello, and welcome to another episode of AI in the Classroom Daily. This is a podcast helping educators make sense of AI without the hype. I'm Dan Cogan-Drew, co-founder, chief academic officer here at Newsella, and I use AI as a thinking partner in preparing each of these episodes because I think the best way to talk honestly about AI in education is to work with it openly. So today we want to take a few minutes to help you get oriented with regard to the latest research on AI in K-12. The space is evolving quickly. The research is struggling to keep up with the pace of innovation. And we want to take a minute when we see researchers doing the hard work of summing up what we know to bring that forward and present that for your consideration in whatever position you may be relative to generative AI right now. By the end of this episode, we want you to be on your way to answering this question. Does our school's GenAI use actually look like what the research says works? To help you answer that question, we're looking today at a report released earlier this month, billed as a, quote, rapid literature review and implications for pre-K-12 education, which was published by the Barker Institute, the University of Sydney, and Barker College. We're going to name 4 patterns of AI implementation. We're going to hold them up to the light of what we know from this report about the state of research for each one. We'll say at the outset that they don't all produce the same outcomes. Some of them don't produce durable learning at all. Now, before we jump in, if you like this format of identifying models and reviewing them according to the research, you might want to check out yesterday's episode in which we did the same thing, specifically in that case tied to AI tutoring and the state of the research along 6 different models. So today we're talking about 4 patterns of AI implementation and use in K-12 classrooms. We'll call the first pattern open access to a general purpose tool. So picture that students are getting ChatGPT and they can use it however they want. Here's what the research found. Bastani et al. Tracked nearly 1,000 high school math students. They gave half unrestricted ChatGPT, the kind that generates full answers. The other half got a version specifically designed to withhold the answers and instead ask guiding questions. Both groups improved during practice, but when the AI was removed, the unrestricted group actually performed worse than students who had never used AI at all. The group with the guardrails performed like the control. This matters because the research is showing that in these cases, students feel like they're learning. The work looks like it's improving, and scores during the use of the generative AI go up, but the learning doesn't stick. If you're a teacher in a district or a school where the practice is to give students unrestricted access to a tool like ChatGPT or Claude, you might ask yourself, to what extent do you see students accepting the responses from the AI as given versus critically examining each one? If you're an admin considering or in the midst of an implementation like this, consider the implications for how you assess student understanding that you're going to, if you do provide the generative AI at some point during an assessment, have to give an assessment without the generative AI because the impact of using the tool during the assessment is substantial. So pattern 1 is open access versus guardrailed. Pattern 2 is guardrailed versus purpose-built. So imagine that the tool is designed with some friction that's built in this purpose-built tool. It won't give you the answer, and it's going to ask you to explain your reasoning. The purpose here is to make you slow down before you move forward. So here's an example from research. Borjigan and Chen ran a middle school STEM project where GenAI was configured as what they called a reflection assistant. Instead of answering questions, the tool prompted students to analyze what went wrong, what they learned, and what they do next. Students who were using this version produced significantly more metacognitive statements than students who were using paper journals, for example. Just as important, when teachers checked in later, those students could articulate their thinking independent of the AI. The point here is to call attention to the friction that the tool is designed to introduce. That's what's going to make the thinking stay. So one implication from research here is if you're a teacher using one of these tools, examine what the tool is asking students to produce. What is the external production of whatever action they're being asked to take? In this case, writing a reflective journal. So moving on to pattern 3. So imagine here that you have the hybrid teacher plus the AI feedback. So the setup in the research is to have both the teacher and the AI give feedback on student work, doing different jobs, but in a complementary way. So the research finding that's applicable here is that researchers Ezoe and Tagagi watched 6th graders get feedback on math reflections. Some of the feedback came from teachers, some came from AI, and it alternated. The teacher feedback honed in on the math reasoning and how students were regulating their own learning. The AI feedback was mostly about encouragement and praise. Students rated the feedback as useful based on whether it matched what they needed in that moment, not on whether it came from the AI or from their teacher. What made this work was that they were getting 2 different kinds of input and that they were complementary. The point here is that this isn't really about AI replacing the feedback. It's about the AI doing something that feedback alone doesn't do, while the teacher does what the AI can't do. So this is a question then for you as a teacher, as you're thinking about working in a complementary way with the AI. What is the feedback that only you can provide? And what is the AI contributing that's different and complementary? If you're an admin administering this kind of a model or coaching teachers using this kind of a model, think about the purpose of implementing this model. Are you using it to multiply the teacher feedback, that is, increase the amount that teachers are giving? Or are you trying to reduce the amount of feedback that teachers have to give? Okay, so let's talk about the 4th model, which we'll call the embedded GenAI. And that's in the case where it's not an add-on, but it's actually woven into how the task works. And the cognitive work that the task is designed to develop stays with the student according to the research. So let's take a look at an example of this. Zhao et al. Tested 3 ways to teach computational thinking in elementary science. 3 conditions. One group got a structured reflection activity plus the GenAI support. Another group got the same reflection activity without GenAI. And a third group got GenAI support, but without the reflection structure. The result was that the group with reflection plus GenAI showed the strongest learning, but they didn't significantly outperform the group with reflection alone. The point here is that the design of the task was what was doing the work, and the GenAI was actually secondary. So the takeaway from this model is it's not really whether you're using the AI, it's about whether the design of the activity is preserving that kind of thinking that you want, in this case, reflective thinking, in a way that's going to build that capacity going forward. So this is another case. If you're a teacher using AI in this model, you want to take away the AI and you want to test for that transfer and that independent learning without the assistance of the AI. So stepping back from each of these 4 patterns, here are some takeaways from the perspective of teachers, coaches, and leaders. So 1, as a teacher, you really have to think about how the tool is being configured. It's not so much specifically about an individual tool, but it's about whether that tool has been modified to suit the instructional purpose. The danger is that if the tool has not been modified to support the instructional purpose, it's likely to lead to dependence. And you'll see this show up when students are asked to demonstrate the same understanding, but without the tool. As an instructional coach, take a look at these 4 models and help teachers understand the difference. If a teacher is coming to you and saying, I'm using AI in my writing unit, that's a different case depending on what that means. If they're using the open access or a guardrail technology, is the AI doing the feedback or supporting teacher feedback? Is the AI peripheral to what students need, or is it central to it? Take a look at what the research says based on each of these models, and then you'll be able to coach teachers appropriately. So that leads us to our 3 takeaways, which are a reflection of everything that we've just been saying. First, the open access to general purpose tools without guardrails is going to produce a performance paradox. Students are going to look like they're learning, they're going to tell you that they're learning, but when you take away the AI on the scaffold that it was providing, you can see that the learning doesn't stick, it's not transferable. The second is that guardrail tools and thoughtful task design are able to preserve learning because they preserve the cognitive work with the student, and that's what matters the most. But that requires design time and not just access to the tool, so you'll have to build that into a thoughtful implementation. And then the third thing here is that it's really not about the tool. This report is titled Young People Learning and Generative AI, but it's really about the configuration of the tool, not the tool itself, that's going to determine whether the learning is going to be durable. The same underlying AI model can lead to different outcomes based on whether it's constrained, structured, unconstrained, unstructured, whether there's been enough time for planful design of the implementation. So I'm curious, as you're hearing me describe these 4 patterns, Do these patterns actually describe what you're doing in your district? Does the research adequately map to your use cases in a way that helps you inform what you're doing? If it doesn't, if there's a fifth pattern, what is that fifth pattern? How are you using the AI? And do you feel like you have research support for your use of the AI? Or do you feel like you're out ahead of the research and the research has yet to catch up with you? As always, curious for your thoughts. Would love to know the real-time implications of this for you on the ground as we head into the school year. As always, thanks for spending a little bit of time with us today on AI in the Classroom Daily, and we will see you again tomorrow.